channel, and we're going to kind of do a live wrenching session on my Mini B as well as on the WLToys 104001. Not a lot to be done on both of them right now. The Mini B is right there. Adjust the camera just a little bit so that you guys can see what's going on with it. Get the transmitter out of the way. So I did the upgrades on it to go to the aluminum shocks. Took it out and ran it up at Gold Star Hobbies up in Arlington, and it did really well. I'm very happy with how it performs and how it runs. Probably one of the funnest RC cars I've had in a very long time. Let me try to track down my wrench here real quick. A few little issues with it. One of the first things I did right off the bat was I swapped out, went to aluminum shocks on it and made a couple of other little changes. Did the shocks, put in the brushless system. With switching out to the aluminum shocks, ran into a few little snags with it. In that the rear shocks leaked real bad on me after I already rebuilt them once, and then dealing with the front bell cranks. I snapped one of those, and also the ball ends get loose real quick. Also, another thing is, you look at it, pretty floppy there on that servo saver. Now that I have put in the aluminum bell cranks and everything that's in there, that's going to probably be one of the next things I do, is get a Metal Gear servo and then remove and eliminate that entirely, to where I'm not having to deal with that. See if I got using a different wrench there than what it's supposed to be. Let's see if I can find the Mini B one. Not super organized. Been off work for a little bit for some issues I've been having. So hopefully I'm getting myself back on track here shortly. Let you guys all look at the top of my head or my shoulder, depending on what you see. And of course, I'm not finding it right here on top. It should have been. Now, if anybody has come across, that should be one, I believe, a little nut driver that's the right size for these, which that's not going to be, so I'm going to end up doing something I shouldn't do, which is use a new pair of pliers to unscrew the nuts. If anybody's got that size and knows what the nut driver size is on it, please add it to the messages. If you're on YouTube, add it to the comments. Did print up a little cool car stand. Got the idea off of, or not the idea, the design off of Thingiverse. And it just makes I scaled mine down, I'm going to say it was 63%, I believe it was, from what the original was, and it works pretty good. Gets the tires off the ground just enough to make it a little bit easier to work on. There's a few things, little minor adjustments I'd like to make on it on the next one I'm printing up. And there's a lot of good stuff that's there. Printed up the bell cranks, and it could be that my 3D printer doesn't have the right, or isn't a good enough 3D printer, or the software I'm using on it isn't good enough on how it's setting up the slicing. But didn't make super good forms, and I'm having to, anything that's a hole that's supposed to be drilled doesn't turn out real great. So I'm going to get myself some more of these little nuts, because I'm going to lose those things. They're so small. But one of the other little issues that I've had is these little shock cups at the bottom of your shock. Fronts haven't given me any grief at all, but I've had the rears pop off a couple of times. Let me grab my paper towel. As you can tell, and I did get a new phone. Hopefully you guys can see that. Quite a bit of fuzz on there from the carpet. Shock oil definitely attracts the fuzz. And it does look like the caps did get loose on me, so that's going to explain why we leaked shock oil all over the place. Let's see if I've got my setup here that I used. Tracks this one. Apologize for the messy workbench, but I haven't had a chance to just here we go. Actually stuck the mini T setup into it. Seems to work all right. Do you think the box stock setup does seem to work a little bit better on some of the, oh, dare I say, abrupt jumps? If I case it a little bit, Chelsea seems to work better. Just for a little bit of background, guys, I've got mine, which I'm kind of using as a test bed, putting a lot of different stuff on it that I think it would work well. And then once I get everything figured out on that, then I'll go ahead and invest in the money and put stuff onto Chelsea's. She's got this as you know, these are perfect for running on up at Gold Star. And so, you know, that's why I went ahead and got her setup. Thought about getting her the Mini T brushless, but just decided that, you know, they don't really have a Mini T class up there that I've seen so far. Cammy, get down. Okay, tripod is bouncing because, of course, Cammy the kamikaze cat is messing with the tripod. Of course, when I get up to remove her and get her off of it, she tails out, but that's all right. I'm going to go ahead and get this shock cap off of here. I'm going to rebuild the shocks real quick. I'm going to put a spacer in there. What I was saying earlier, was when I'm losing these little shock caps, it seems like it's overextending. And when that happens, it causes the shock to go further down than where the spring's got pressure on it. And also, I'm not going to hurt the car to max out and stay just a touch lower. I also got some green slime, got some of the two different kinds. I got the associated, which I've used for years, and then also I did get some of the Team Losi version. To be completely honest, it's probably the exact same stuff. It looks the same. Losi's in a tube. So I'll introduce you guys to this little bag of goodies, because that's where I've got that lube right now. Working on a third Mini B. This one is going to be a complete custom build. Going to have a complete MIP transmission in it. I put the MIP ball diffs into Chelsea in my cars. My car seems to be doing fine. I haven't had too much trouble with it loosening up. Chelsea's ball diff loosens up probably every 2 or 3 runs. So I've got some blue Loctite. I've got that laying around here somewhere. I'll grab that. I'm not sure if I'll put that on today, but I will be adding some Loctite to it just so that it makes sure to try to start keeping that on where it belongs instead of having it come loose on us. So go ahead and snip the end of this off. Now, since the shock's already been built, I'm going to go ahead and lubricate the shaft. Smear it around a little bit with the paper towel. I don't know if anybody else has any other methodology that they use. When I'm building the shock completely from scratch, you know, I always put it on business end. But alright, so we got that lubricated. See how the spacer works. Yeah, a little bit bigger and a little bit looser than I wanted, but it'll do. For now, at least. May have to swap it out in a later date. So a little bit of stiction, just going to work that. Put some more in there. Basically, I just put it on the shaft itself and just kind of work it around. Basically, what you're trying to do is just get it in there to those seals. There we go. And you can start feeling it loosen up and not want to stick so much. So there I've got piston, little aluminum spacer, probably 1/8 of an inch or so. And that's just going to give me a little bit less extension. Because like I was saying, when you absolutely launch this thing, I think the springs are just, to get the right height set correctly where the dog bones are level, you don't quite have the springs set up too high, and it's just extending itself too much when it goes. So let's see, the suspension setup called for 30 weight, so we will go back ahead and put 30 weight back in here. Feel it, of course it goes a little bit too much. And I am using the, I've got the factory team shock oil on it that I'm putting in. To be really honest, guys, I've used Losi, I've used Associated, I've used Traxxas. All of it pretty much works the same, in my opinion. I'm sure you'll probably get, diehards for certain manufacturers that, aren't going to agree with me, which, hey, everybody's entitled to their opinion. So I'm going to compress that down. Rub this on. Yeah, that's interesting. So the shock body is actually long enough that you don't bottom the shaft out. Try to release the pressure on it. And then the excess oil out. And a little bit of preload in there. Looks like I just tore the O-ring. So there's a little seal on there. It's interesting, it looked like it tore, and then it just returned right back where it belongs. So I'm going to go ahead and just try to be a little less aggressive on what I'm doing. We got that extra air. A little bit of a bulge right there. They have changed some of their designs since the last time I was racing regularly. I got that everything's bulging on me. They're just being squeezed right on out. finger tight on it. Seems to be keeping the O-ring in there for the most part. It's bulging just a little bit. Shock seam does seem to be working correctly though, so we're going to go ahead and stick it back together. And we're going to roll with that. When we get to the track, we'll see if it leaks on me again. Okay. Throw the end cap on. This is going to actually have gone rather easy. Try to clean up the outside of the shock as much as I can. One of the nice things about carpet tracks is you do got a little bit of air in it. For the most part, it's working all right. So we'll go ahead and stick this on there. And as you can see, now that's enough. That ball end should not be coming off. Also should keep that suspension a little bit lower when it maxes out. Go ahead and get it back together here. And again, I've got to get a nut driver for that little thing. The mostly wrench doesn't seem to have an end on it that's going to fit correctly. And all using the pliers going to do is tear up that nut. But sometimes you got to use what you got. Stubborn on that, so I'm not going to be able to get it in with the nut driver right away. Probably would have been better off taking the back tire off, not rustling around it. I've always been of the mind that the less I disassemble, the better. Less things to use. But I'm not going to have a choice on this one. And never fails, always misplaced wrenches. There we are. When I need them. So far the tires are wearing pretty good. We don't have a lot of runs in on them, but more than a couple. Haven't raced them yet. Been waiting for my programming card to get here. Ordered the first one for the brushless system, and of course I didn't do enough research, and so I ordered one that doesn't work with the Hobby Park ESC, but I have one that is sitting at the post office. I didn't make it there on time today. I wanted to go get it picked up and then film, but again I didn't make it on time, so I didn't end up being able to get it. This little ball cups just want to get all out of shape on me. Next time outside, I think I'm going to do the bottom first. I think that would have gone a little bit smoother. As I get time to wrench on these little things a lot more, I'll be a little bit smoother on what I'm doing. It's been a good 10 years since I've raced RCs. A little bit of air in there. I'm not happy about that, but I think it'll be good for the next practice session at least. And plus, once the car has had some time to settle, shouldn't be too bad. I was talking to some of the guys up there at the track, and one of the things they're saying that they're doing is putting stiffer springs in. I'm really tentative to do that right now because, you know, again, like I said, Chelsea's runs real well. You know, it doesn't have too much trouble or too many issues with getting it to settle in the corners. And of course, there goes my nut. It looks like I'm going to have to go try to figure out where that went. Well, I do have some others from the original Mini T, so take a look around on my floor here and see if it landed someplace where I can see it. I heard it hit the ground and just take off and just disappear, so see if these are the same wheel nuts. They look like they are, hopefully. Well, from what I've read, they have shifted. That's the same one. Okay. I'm safe. There's always a good reason to hold on to old car parts. But Lubricate shifted their manufacturer over to Taiwan. The last time I got out of RCs, it was right when a couple years later was when they started having the big shakeups where Losi sold and Gil left the company, and he had just signed with Kyosho, and so that made me wonder what direction Losi was going to go. You know, and then of course I had my big layoff of not having anything to do with the hobby, and then getting back into it. Yep. What's up, Tech Geek? It's going pretty good. Made with a Raspberry Pi. I don't know what you can do with a Raspberry Pi with RC cars, to be completely honest. I haven't messed with that stuff too much. Yeah, I think if you're looking at electronics, I would highly recommend stick with what's out there. You know, the over-the-counter stuff is good enough that trying to program your own stuff doesn't make a lot of sense when you just buy over-the-counter stuff and be in good shape, and it's all fairly reasonably priced nowadays. You know, thankfully the brushless motor systems have come down considerably in price, and got a lot of decent equipment out there. So we're going to go ahead and we'll get the oil out of this one, get the spacer in there, and lubricate that shaft. Another nice thing about the carpet tracks is you don't really scrape up your shock shafts and stuff too. It's new for me running on the carpet. You know, I've done most of my racing on dirt, some a little bit of asphalt, but mostly parking lot racing. Get this on there. Just a little bit of stiction on that, but I'm not going to kill it. Get the spacer on there. Try not to lose my shock cap. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and thread this on before I reassemble. Had a little bit of trouble with the threads getting down below where I wanted them to be on that first one. Alright, there we go. Got some movement on it. This pretty much guarantees it. Yeah. I'm going to make a little bit of a mess every time I put that cap on there for the first time. Bring it down finger tight. That one, the other end didn't do anything wonky or weird. And then I did pressurize, so we'll loosen it up and get the pressure out of it. And some of those just a case of real slow putting that cap back on there so it just can displace that extra oil as much as possible. Well, those little O-rings are going to get there. Time I tighten it down, even finger tight, it's expanding, trying to tear. So that is without a doubt, I'm going to say, my problem on getting my shock leakage. Anybody out there has any suggestions on that one, feel free to let me know. You know, perhaps I'm just over tightening it or tightening it too fast. But, alright. Got our compression in there, we got our shock limiter in there. Loosen that baby up. Alright. Flip her on over here. And like I said, I'm going to try to do the bottom first this time around, and hopefully that's going to be an easier solution for me. You know, normally I wouldn't be enthralled about having plastic shocks on a car, but like I was saying, Chelsea's has worked so well without making any modifications. My project car, I'm really debating as to whether I'm going to put the aluminums on it or if I'm going to go with like a GRM. I've read some pretty positive things about those shocks. Just not sure about being able to get rebuilds for them or replacement caps. That's one of the issues you run into with buying some of the Chinese stuff that's out there and not being able to get the parts, or at least not knowing if you can get the parts. If anybody knows a supplier for GRM that sells replacement shock parts, by all means, you know, put that up in the comments. I'd love to know where I can get those at so I can give it a try. They've got some pretty interesting looking shocks. Read some pretty positive reviews about it, although they've been about the Traxxas versions. But generally you don't find a company that makes a decent product for one vehicle, it's not going to be just as good for the next one over. Alright. Get this button back up. And I'll put placement. Because I'm not going to crawl around on the floor while I got you guys on camera and try to figure out where the other nut went. These are also some decent nylocks, so I'd rather have them on there anyway. Alright, so there we go. Back shocks are set back up. One other thing that I wanted to get done today is I need to find my blue Loctite that I bought. Like I said, I put the, and I'm going to eyeball my dog bones real quick, make sure that I got reasonably close to the ride height that I want. And it's pretty decent. It's sitting flat, which is where I want it to be. So, but like I said, I put the aluminum bell cranks in, but I didn't have any Loctite, so was gonna let it go and just try to race it this way for a little bit, but the more I think about it, the more I just know those things need to be Loctited in there, and I know I shouldn't take shortcuts, and I know better. We'll leave it at that. Been there, done that many times. And like I said, that's the servo saver right there being full of slop. Turn the radio on and it moves everything correctly, but don't really like it. One thing I will knock these about their design. I really don't like how you get to the bell cranks. It's kind of a pain in the neck. You gotta pull the bumper off, or the bumper off from the bottom. And then you got 4 screws on the top to get to it. and I was working with trying to make some on the 3D printer. There's a pre-trimmed version of it. Probably once I get around to fiddling around with it and fitting it properly, it'll probably be good, but at the same time, it's still a plastic piece. So pull those two bottoms ones, you pull these two, and you pull these two, and that gets you down to it. Not horrible, but I miss the days where you pulled two screws off and you had full access to it. But the more polymer they add, the more composite they add to these cars, the more braces you have to add to them as well. And there, that pops off. The whole front shock towers and everything. And the screws I'm going to do are just these two right here, which bolt that baby on there. I'm going to not too concerned about the ball ends, because I don't think they're going to have enough rotation on them, enough movement to cause a problem. But these little shoulder bolts I'm definitely have a little bit of concern about. Just gonna get enough on there for the threads, because it's got to push through the bell crank first before it threads into the tube. And again, me and my desire to minimize how much I'm disassembling, probably going to pay the price for it on this, but gently going to thread that in. It's going into aluminum, so I don't want it to strip out. And just go tight and just back it off just less than 1/8 of an inch or 1/8 of a turn or so. Essentially just backing it off just enough that it's loose. This one I'm going to try to assemble. Just dabbing the lock tapes as I'm dripping it all over the place. Then snuggle her down, backing it off just a little bit. And trusting that the Loctite's going to hold that baby in there tight. Yep, I lost one of my bushings came out. Now the bell cranks have these little funky bushings that go in them. And I'm going to try to find myself some bearings to replace it, especially running on the carpet track. I think the bearings will just reduce the fact that eventually you're going to have to replace the plastic bushings. If I'm going to have to replace them, yeah, might as well stick bearings in them. Come on, baby, slide on there. There we go. Alright, bushings intact. Everything's there. Time to reassemble. I didn't pull the screws off the middle here. I'm going to go ahead and just thread them back in there. Just going to put it back together the reverse direction that I took it apart. pinch there, so I'm going to do the same thing. Just going to take it down snug and just back it off just a little bit, just to make sure it doesn't bind on anything down there. And when you put the front bumper in there, you gotta make sure you put it in the tab first. Your screws go through everything. And so for those of you that heard me address Tech Geek 19, he's on the live chat here on Twitch. And what I do is I'll go ahead and I'll record on Twitch, do the live cast, and then I'll do a rebroadcast over on YouTube. And what he asked is if this could be done with, made with Raspberry Pi, and if that would work with it. And like I said, I think that I would just go with conventional over-the-counter electronics, not try to go too robotic with it. I mean, I'm sure that you probably could, but you got to program, you know, you probably have to want to go with the standard electronics in it, and then if you programmed anything on the Raspberry Pi, you'd have to disassemble a transmitter and make that work with it. So alright, so there we go. That is the extent of what I needed to do to the Mini B today. So we've got the shocks on the back put back together. Everything seems to work. When you see people with RCs, you know, pick them up and drop them, what that does is that gives the opportunity for the weight to compress onto the suspension, and then you can kind of see if your ride height's where you want it to be. And in this case, I'm going to make sure that my rear dog bones are pretty level. Had a real good guess on how I put it on there, and with those shock limiters, it worked out pretty well. So we're going to put this thing down, and off to the side, we're going to break out the WLToys. I haven't got it on the track yet. It's been sitting here. Had some issues that I've been dealing with for the last week. Had originally hoped to get to the track this week and get some practice runs in. Didn't make it. Wasn't feeling well this morning, so was just way too tired to bother packing my gear up and driving that half hour up there to get to the track. So again, very happy. You know, guys want opinions. I'll give you some quick opinions. Mini Bs are a blast. Looks like a scaled down version of the 22 from the best I can tell. Absolutely love it on the carpet track. Out of the box, it's probably pretty good. Not sure I would go ahead and invest in the MIP ball diffs. I did that in all of our cars because of the fact that when I pulled the first one apart, it was so full of grease. I wanted to go with something that's a little bit more conventional, a little bit more something that I'm used to working with, which is the ball diffs. And that, like I said, Chelsea's backs up and loosens up on hers every couple of runs. I've got mine torqued way down to where it hasn't loosened up on me, but there's a distinct possibility that it will. So anyway, transitioning over to the 104 001. Essentially all I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to go in here and cut down my side straps here, because what they did is they put the car together and they give you this little 2200 milliamp battery pack. Well, you know, we're Americans. Let's be honest. We want more power, and I want something that gives me what I need along the lines of battery life. There we go. Versus, you know, what they put in it. So basically what I'm going to do here, guys, is I'm going to take the original battery pack out battery pack assembly out. Just cut the edges off of it. On my original video, another gentleman made the comment that all he had to do was just make some quick modifications, and that's all being able to get it in there. So I chewed up the screw there. So yeah, pretty much looks like I can just pop these off, take the Dremel to them, and I'm just going to whack off the edges. I'll get the RPMs a bit here. It's not wanting to go up. There we go. Now, stand corrected, this is not a Dremel tool. This is a hyper tough rotary tool. I wanted to go with cordless, but didn't want to spend the extra $10 on a Dremel this time around, so I'm just going to whack these ears off of it. Alright, so there you go. Just whack the ears off of that one. We'll put that back in. And with the mud guard and everything on there, I think it's going to pretty much be in good shape for holding the pack. Screws put back in this, and just hop over to the back half and pull that one out and cut those down real fast. As I get older, the more tools I have that ease my arthritis, the better. I think I'm going to get some replacement screws for this thing. Looking like they're all the same. And unfortunately, I don't have a setup board, so I can't go in and make sure that I'm balanced. Well, that's interesting. That just wraps around underneath, so it shouldn't be a big deal to get fixed. And kids, if you do this at home, make sure that you're wearing eye protection because hot plastic burns. And this one doesn't have the foam on it to start with. I'm just going to try to clean it up as much as I can. Okay, so pretty straightforward and simple to do that. Just a couple of screws to pull off, one on the mud guard, one on the chassis. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure that this is through. It never hurts to double check and triple check stuff to make sure you're getting it on there the way it needs to go. I did order the Graphite Chassis for this. One of the things that I noticed right off the bat, it's pretty heavy. And so, first order of business is going to be putting this thing, well, first order of business was getting this battery in there. Second order of business is going to be getting it to lose some weight. And then I think we'll bang for the buck. It's going to be probably one of the best investments I've made RC wise. I've always wanted to play in the 4-wheel drive class. I've had an old Schumacher, inexpensive Schumacher. I'm pulling off a wheel tape here that I didn't realize I'd missed. Had an old Schumacher 4-wheel drive back when they offered an economy model and then a more advanced model. I have the economy model. I really didn't race it any more than probably once or twice. And then we went back to a different type of racing and got away from the 4-wheel drive so much. Slip this underneath up here on the front. And looks like could use just a little bit of padding in there, which won't be a big deal. And then I'll be able to tug this down, although it does look like it's going to get on my sensor wire. A little bit in there, but pad it a couple different directions. Need to make sure that I'm not rubbing up against the drive shafts. And that I'm not coming loose. Alright, so might not have been a bad idea to just go ahead and leave the tabs on the inside of it. Let's see, got some two-sided tape here, which will work to try to push it away from the drive shaft. And I thought I had my extra battery pads sitting here, but I'm not seeing them. And those are off of, oh, there it is, an old Associated. There we are. A little bit weird when I get a chance to stick something with some tape. I'll do it just so I have less opportunity to drop stuff and lose it. I haven't even, pretty odd for me to go several weeks without even putting batteries in the transmitter on a car, but I haven't even done that with this thing. I'm leaving the stock radio equipment in it right off the bat. Not even going to rebuild the shocks or anything. We're just going to take it to the track, hopefully be able to get some footage. My biggest problem with getting footage as of late is I've been really trying hard to get on-car cameras, and they just haven't stuck. They haven't, there's just been these little flaws. Thought I had some really good footage on the Mini B with the little micro Magnavox camera. Murphy's Law, it didn't record. When it came flying off the car, There we go. So got that pad in there, and it compresses enough that I can squeeze that in there. And I slide my battery strap through. And I probably could have left the inner tab in there, so I think if I were to do it again, I'd just cut out the outer tabs. But that right there, guys, that gets the full-size standard 5600 battery pack in there. I think if I had just cut those other tabs, that would have given me a little bit more security on making sure that my pack's not going to rub against the drive shaft. I might have to get creative, maybe glue a piece of plastic in there or something just for a spacer. But with that said, guys, for those of you that have joined us, I hope you enjoyed. Gonna look at this thing a little bit more, get the videos done, and then hopefully we'll be able to get you a race report. I will be honest, what I've heard on this car so far is that it's just underpowered for what it is. But my starting point and thought on that is the battery for one is the start. Because that battery pack on it is definitely going to be weak at best. Little 2200 milliamp, I'm sure it's 7.4 volts, but I'm just not super impressed with, you know, the expectation that you're going to go out and have fun and run for a while on that little thing compared to what we're used to running. So I'm going to found another piece of foam I'll stick in here instead of these little pieces of tape, and then hopefully that'll satisfy my padding needs. Again, real easy to get a shorty battery in here like everybody else is running, and I'm going to put it as far forward as I can get it, just to try to balance everything out. So now I'll stick it in there with a really large piece of foam in there, and that's going to jam this thing in there tight and keep it away from the drive shaft. Alright, so there we go. But again, had I been paying a little bit more attention to it and gauged a little bit better from the back start, I probably wouldn't have cut those inner tabs off, just would have cut the outer tabs off of it. And then that would have worked. But there we go. It's in there, it's snug, it's tight. Kind of do a rough balance test. Yeah, not bad there. And yeah, doesn't look like it's going to throw the balance off too far off to the side either. So there we go. So my take on the car right off the bat, just by playing with it a little bit, everything looks really nice on it. Suspension looks like it's set up for a basher, which actually should translate to being good for a carpet track. And with just a real short little modification, you can get the little shorty batteries in it, to where it's kind of more along the lines of what we as Americans tend to go out there and play with. So with that said, guys, I'm going to go ahead and end this broadcast. Thanks for watching. Let you see me a little bit. There we go. Thanks for watching. Thank you for your comments. If you guys have any hints or suggestions on either of these cars, anything you'd like to share with everybody, by all means, put it in the comments on YouTube. I'll share those on my next broadcast. And you know, if you've run these cars and you like them, or you have things that you don't like about them, feel free to let us all know. I'm very big on it being a kind of a community thing where we all share with each other and we all you know, help each other have a great time. So with that said, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you all soon.